A Tory wipeout could be on the horizon, with a devastating new poll showing the Conservatives could be reduced to just 72 seats, but with tactical voting considered, that could drop to 66. Labour is predicted to win by a huge landslide with a possible 302-seat majority. The polling suggests Conservatives could return only around 7 more MPs than the Liberal Democrats. Ouch. Here are the 18 Conservative cabinet ministers who could lose their jobs. Oliver Dowden, the Deputy PM, James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, Grant Shapps, Defence, Penny Mordaunt, Kemi Badenoch, Claire Coutinho, Mel Stride, Gillian Keegan, Education, Mark Harper, David Davis, Victoria Prentice, Esther McVeigh, Andrew Mitchell, Johnny Mercer. Wow, they could all go to Labour. That's a lot of big beasts there. And Alex Chalk and Michael Tomlinson could both lose to the Lib Dems as well. Whew. A-lister Jack would lose to the SNP and Simon Hart to Plaid Cymru. Another big name would be Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Joining me now, wow, actually, there's a lot of names there, isn't there? Really big names. Joining me now to analyse what the hell is going on here is Senior Political Commentator Nigel Nelson. Nigel, thank you so much for joining me on a Saturday afternoon. I wouldn't want to be Rishi Sunak waking up today, would you?
No, I wouldn't. And this poll is particularly devastating for him because it's a so-called MRP poll, which, unlike other polls, includes undecideds. It predicts how the undecideds will vote. So it's thought to be more accurate than other polls. And normally the MRP polls give the Tories a slightly better result. So Rishi Sunak won't like the result he's looking at today.
It is a shock because, I mean, it's like if Labour have that size majority, I mean, we know polls are polls, Nigel. We know they have been proved wrong in the past, and the Conservatives today are taking that attitude, aren't they? It is a poll. We will wait and see. But I mean, it's a majority of that size for Labour. I don't think we've seen before, have we?
No, this would be a historic defeat for the Tories if they were only to come back with 66 MPs. And yes, you're right there. I think that there is a certain concern. What you need in a vibrant democracy is a decent opposition. What you need is to be able to scrutinise legislation that's being put through. And obviously, if the Tories are down to that kind of level, they can't do that job. So, yes, there is a certain amount of concern about this, that while quite clearly polls are showing that people want a Labour majority, do they really want such a stonking one that we end up almost like a one-party state?
Do you think it could actually almost backfire on Labour, this result, Nigel? Because it's almost like people that are undecided will be thinking, well, I'm not sure about voting Labour because I don't want them having that much of a say. There is no democracy.
No, I mean, this is the problem, that people start voting tactically because they're a bit worried about a majority that size. This is actually quite difficult under the first past the post system, that while you can vote tactically in individual constituencies, so a Labour voter, for instance, may vote Lib Dem to keep a Tory out, if that's the best way of doing it, or a Lib Dem might vote Tory to keep Labour out. But you can't really do this nationally, which is why it's difficult. Yes, there is a bit of a problem here, and yes, Labour might be worrying perhaps this lead is a bit too far ahead at the moment.
Start doing a few things wrong, maybe. Nigel Nelson, it is, I think, an astonishing time in politics. Thank you very much for joining us and making it slightly clearer. Right, now, joining me now is political commentator and playwright Emma Burnell and editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Ladies, thank you for joining me today, both looking very resplendent in lovely floral outfits. Well, I'm just really boring red. This is not a political statement, by the way. It's just like red, OK, before anyone asks. Now, this poll, I mean, it's an exclusive TV poll to GB News. What do we make of it, Emma? I mean, it is like the Tories could end up with 66 seats.
It's quite astonishing. When I was actually doing some work on a completely separate project that meant I had to go into the electoral calculus who did the polling for GB News and the Mail last night, and the website crashed.
I can imagine.
I was like, why has that happened? I'd been watching the final of Race Around the World with my parents. I had no idea what was going on. And then I went on to Twitter and I was like, oh, it's not just, I mean, there was a metaphor used in the 97 election that this was like a meteor crashing to the earth and wiping out all life. And that must be what it feels like for the Tories at the moment. This is not a 97 result. It's like a double 97 result. And that would be quite extraordinary. Now, given that, it's really hard not to take it with a certain pinch of salt. There's a lot of the election campaign left to go. I think it would be really hard to claw back a win from the Tories from here, but I suspect that what they're going to try and do is absolutely minimise their loss.
I mean, Charlotte, this is pretty much unheard of, isn't it? I mean, this is more than people going, right, OK, the Conservatives have been in for 14 years, we're just going to vote to get them out. There has to be more going on here because this is such a huge pushback.
Yeah, I think people are angry. This is the sign that people are angry and they want to punish the Conservatives. And I also think that actually the message of change is getting through, which is unsurprising given that...
You said the change word.
I know. I was going to say, given that Keir says the word change 500 times a day, but I think it is getting through. I think people are desperate to just clear the decks and start again. And I actually think some of the Conservatives think, God, it'd be quite good actually to start again, get some new faces in. You know, obviously some major players are going to get cleared out here.
Yes.
And get some new fresh blood in. And, yeah, I think they're being punished, actually, the Conservatives.
Emma, I mean, sort of like Reform are coming third. According to this poll, Reform are coming third on 11.2, well, the Lib Dems are only on 9.5. Now, that's not saying a lot about the Lib Dems campaign at the moment, is it?
But the Lib Dems are predicted to win a lot more seats than Reform, who I don't believe are predicted.
No, they're not predicted to get a seat.
The Lib Dems are not running a national campaign. They may be doing national broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
You may have seen Ed Davey falling off various things.
Quite good at it, to be fair.
He is very good at falling off things. But what they're doing is a very, very well-targeted campaign to take out specific Conservative seats. There's almost no seats where Labour and the Lib Dems are facing each other. So they can target those resources really, really clearly onto those Tories who are weakened. And that's why they are... What will be fascinating, Reform already, to be fair, have this as a policy. What will be interesting is how many Tories suddenly get converted to the cause of electoral reform after the election.
Well, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Do you think, though, Charlotte, that Labour will be, as we were already discussing with Nigel, sort of people will be thinking, well, I'm not sure, there's not really a democracy if you've got one party with that size majority. But do you also think Labour might be thinking, well, they're not really voting for our policies, they're voting against Conservatives, as you said, because there's a lot of anger out there. But it's not really a positive message about Labour, it's just because they hate the Tories so much.
I don't think the Labour Party will mind. You know, they'll just take the majority. But I have to say, on your previous point, I think it's true because I have at least one friend who was planning to vote for Labour because she's so desperate to see decisive change. And those people might think, oh, actually, we don't want that much decisive change because we don't want a one-party state. But I do know people that just thought, you know, we can't have a hung parliament. There was talk of a hung parliament at one point, which now goes completely out the window. But people are so keen for these policies, if they find some decent policies, to just get them through and for there to be less infighting and, you know, backbench sort of politics. People are so bored of that now. They just want decisive change, I think.
Talking of decisive change and infighting and backbiting, we know the Conservatives are divided in so many areas, but this week we've seen a bit more division within Labour over the whole Diane Abbott saga, haven't we?
Diane Abbott and a few others. It's not been the most edifying week for the Labour Party. As you know, I'm a Labour member and supporter, but I do always try to say when I feel that they've got something wrong. And whoever briefed the Times about Diane Abbott being barred, after what had clearly been a long, complicated negotiation between her and Lotto and the NEC about how a real managed and dignified potential retirement, absolutely screwed up. And I'm not going to say anything else because it would be... I try to be honest in my analysis of my party.
What was so depressing about that whole unedifying week was it showed that actually there are quite a lot of white, sort of well-to-do boys' club boys running the Labour Party behind the scenes, which now suddenly doesn't feel like that much of a change because, you know, we know that that's how the Conservatives have been running. And actually, that's what happened. A sort of little club decided to brief the Times and be all chummy, and it's a chumocracy all over again.
There is a bit of that going on, isn't it?